Joining us now is former Attorney General for the state of Kansas, Phill Kline, who's on the front lines of the fight against big tech interference. So, Phil, I'm really appreciative of you on the program tonight because there are a lot of things overlapping right now when it comes to tech censorship, when it comes to these social media giants having undue influence in the way that we do things. And I know that you are fighting that on a front line somewhere. So can you break down what your efforts are?
Well, our efforts particularly relate to elections, where Mark Zuckerberg has poured $350 million through a charity into specific cities to help them turn out the vote in the general election. And out of the top 20 grants that have been given, $66 million, all of that, but only 289,000 has gone to counties to turn out the vote that went heavily for Clinton in 2016. So you've got tech money into local government playing favorites in an election, and that's concerning. And it is doubly concerning when you see the censorship that is occurring as well.
And I want to touch on that election aspect as well, because I think everybody has seen, for example, at this point, when you log on to Facebook or you log on to Instagram, which, by the way, is owned by Facebook, there are those notifications that say, get out, register to vote, things of that nature. So on that front, it does seem good. You like Americans to participate in elections, but it's when it starts being targeted or used in a different way that may not be neutral, the way that Facebook claims to be. So when we're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, for example, pouring millions of dollars essentially into these efforts, is there campaign finance type of things that get involved or anything like that? Or is this a practice that is well accepted and it's within his right to use the millions of dollars that he has in order to do it?
No, this is the first time we've seen the way that it's being used in this election. Now, Mark Zuckerberg has the right, as every American citizen does, to encourage others to vote, and he can do that. But instead, he's giving the money to specific government officials at the local level, and it's government now that's playing favorites. In Pennsylvania, for example, it's Mark Zuckerberg money that's paying the Philadelphia election judges. And that ought to be a core government function. It shouldn't be we shouldn't have the privatization of elections. Imagine if Charles Koch announced that he was going to go around and give money to jurisdictions that heavily vote Republican, and so that they could have more money to help people to vote than other jurisdictions. We'd have a problem with that. We need to be equal before the law, and government needs to treat everybody equally. And so Mark Zuckerberg shouldn't play this game of directing and managing our elections. That's the distinction. If he wants to give the money to the Democrat National Committee, he can. If he wants to spend it independently and tell Americans to vote or vote for a specific candidate, he can. But getting government to play the game with him is concerning. We've invited billionaires into the counting room, and we've opened the door in the future where people can step forward and say, okay, I'm going to go buy Kansas, I'm going to go buy Nebraska, you go buy Wisconsin. Wow. And that's what we're going to see if we don't stop this.
And you bring up that this is something that you haven't seen done in this way before. And I hear that a lot of times when it comes to these tech giants, for example, getting their hand in an issue that maybe they haven't before. I mean, I always hear that Silicon Valley, for example, is the Wild West in this regard because there really isn't too much precedent when it comes to a lot of their actions. You can't really look back 20 years ago, or you can't look at case law from even 20 years ago, Supreme Court decisions, anything like that, because it is almost a new frontier in that realm. So are we kind of learning the rules and changing them as we go along? Are we in this moment right now where we are defining what they can and cannot do?
Well, yes, because the technology has run ahead of the law, and the law has not kept up. And additionally, the power and the consolidation of information and the power that comes from that and the wealth generated from that has run ahead of the law.
And so what comes next in this whole situation? Because, I mean, a lot of people will say that it's hard to speak out against these tech giants because of censorship or because of how much power they have or anything like that. And it's hard to match, for example, the $350 million going into a certain race or whatever it may be. So what is the solution here? I mean, are we really at the will of our elected leaders to take action and make sure that there is legislation that prevents this from happening? Or do we have to go through perhaps the executive branch and find out some regulations in order to apply? What comes next in this saga?
Well, I think it's electing leaders. That's what makes the difference. I was in office for a while, and a lot of people in office wrestle ghosts. They're afraid to lead. They make their decisions based on, well, what's this person going to say, and how's it going to affect me, and how is this poll going to come down, rather than deciding what is right and what is wrong. And right now in America, free speech is under assault like never before. which means that if we don't protect it now, eventually it will be much harder for Americans to know the truth and to act upon the truth. So it's critical that you elect people who know who they are, who are willing to do the right thing, and don't follow the poll numbers. Because there's going to be a fundamental reordering of our government and the nature of how we engage government based on the results of this election.
Yeah, I mean, what's the saying? Liberty lost is lost forever, something like that. And it does really shed light when you talk about the power that these social media companies have. And so I think that it's one of those things where the conversation is starting to take place, especially when we talk about censorship, but even when it comes to just these tech giants in general. I mean, I remember back in the primary, Elizabeth Warren was talking about breaking up some of these big monopolies at the same time that Senator Josh Hawley was talking about doing the very same thing. It seems like this might be an issue where there is bipartisan consensus when it comes to just the undue influence that these social media giants have. So before I let you go too, do you foresee any action being taken, or do you think that this is one of those issues where it's just going to be a rallying cry during election years?
No, I think that this is with us to stay, and this battle will take some time to resolve.
Yeah, I guess at this point it's up to our elected leaders to take some action, as you were just saying. But Phill Kline, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight, breaking down this very important issue, because it's one that I've never heard of before, and it's one that could quite literally change the direction of the upcoming election as well. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.